Hi, my name is Michael Neeren. I'm an immigration lawyer and founder of visaplace.com. Recently, there has been an article in the Toronto Star about the inner workings of immigration and what red flags officers consider to be of concern that result in possible refusals of cases. And it's very interesting because, for years we've been processing immigration cases, and we kind of know what fact situations will result in some concerns by the officers when they process cases. But there's been a study by a professor at McMaster University who was granted access into the processing departments of Canada Immigration, and found a few red flags or concerns that officers typically have. And so I'm going to list them for you, and it's pretty interesting. One is if you apply for a visitor visa from a poor country or a country where there's a lot of fraud, it's common sense that that application will likely be heavily scrutinized. And it could be any type of visa. So if you're applying for a visa from a country where there's concerns and there's issues, even though your case may be very, very clean, a very good case, you may be subject to a higher level of scrutiny. Another red flag is in the sponsorship area. If the applicant and the sponsor there's a large age gap between them, that's going to cause some concern on the part of an immigration officer, and we know that. Also, if they don't know about each other very well, they can't answer questions about their lifestyles and details about themselves. That could also raise a red flag. Another interesting point that was raised in the article was the number of people at the wedding. In some cultures, that there's hundreds of people typically at these weddings. For example, in the Indian culture, they tend to have very large weddings. So in cases where there's culture, where the culture is the cultural norm, there's a lot of people at the wedding, and an application is processed where there's not very many people. That could raise some issues on the part of the officer who thinks that there could be something strange going on. Another interesting point was love letters. When you file an application for sponsorship, you typically show that the couple is genuine, they care about each other, they love each other, and sometimes you can show some letters of affection between the couple. And if it's overdone, it was argued that if there's too much of it, officer may think it's being manufactured and it's not genuine. So that's a really interesting finding. So if you're going to submit love letters, don't go overboard. Another point was the timing of the application. For example, if an applicant is in Canada already and is facing immigration removal, perhaps has a deportation order issued against that person, and then they subsequently get married and file a sponsorship, well, it's common sense that an officer will be very skeptical about that. The timing is very suspicious. So those are some red flags. We know about those red flags, and also you should know that just because your case may be of concern, for example, if you didn't have a lot of people at your wedding, or that there is a big age gap between you and your spouse, doesn't mean your application is going to get refused. What it does mean is that you should address it head on, well before an officer starts questioning it. So this way you can explain the unusual circumstances, and then in most cases that should alleviate the concern of the officer. If you need any more information or you have some questions, feel free to go to our website at www.visaplace.com. Thank you and have